I see that is a vacuum in leadership. Look, I've worked for the Navy, I've worked at MSNBC, and I've worked in complex problems on the national stage. We need serious solutions to real problems, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, I'm Isabelle Kerner, and I'm running for City Council because I was born and raised here in Seattle, Washington. I left for 2.5 years to attend American University in DC, and then I came back only to realize that the current administration had basically made this whole city a disaster. And I have the solutions that are needed, and I think it's very important to consider 3 things when devising a solution: cost effectiveness, efficiency, and most importantly, feasibility. Because if you don't have them all on board, you're not going to be able to create a solution. Thank you.
Hello everybody, and thank you all for coming here. My name is Andrew Lewis, and I'm running for Seattle City Council because we need change on the Seattle City Council. I grew up in this city, I love this city. I grew up in a working class household, graduated from the center school right here in the heart of District 7. I see the problems facing our city every day as a prosecutor in the Seattle Municipal Court, and we need to be focused again on charter services, essential services, the foundational district services that make this one of the greatest cities to live in and that the Seattle City Council has not been delivering on. I look forward to your questions. I'm here to talk, but I'm more here to listen, and thank you so much again for coming out.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Magnolia, for being here tonight. I'm Jim Pugel. I'm running for Council District 7 because I too have lived here my whole life. My children were raised here and they're now adults. My grandchildren are being raised in the city as well. I was the precinct commander of the West Precinct for 4 years, which makes up the entire District 7. I've seen the direction that the City Council has gone, and it's not responsive to what your needs are. I promise to listen, to do what you need done to make this city right.
Hello, my name is Jason Williams. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm running for City Council to ensure all can benefit as Seattle grows. As a Yale MBA with private sector experience, I want to see Seattle to continue growing because growth creates jobs and investment. As a son of 2 union workers, I want to ensure that everyone can live, work, and play in the same community. And as a father of a 13-month-old who's already ready to tackle the world, I want to ensure that our children are the source of best talent for our future jobs. Thank you.
The first 2 questions, as I said, will be from SOS. And I think that the first 2 questions will not surprise anyone particularly. So this is the very first question to each candidate. And we will begin with, I believe, Daniela. Amy will be the first person to answer this, and you have 45 seconds. According to the King County Medical Examiner in 2014, 87 unsheltered people died in King County. In just 3 years, by 2017, the number was up to 169 deaths, nearly doubling, while the unsheltered population rose by 76%. Can you describe how your recommended response to this emergency would reverse this trend, and how could
Homelessness is a multi-pronged approach. There's no one way to fix homelessness. We have people with mental disabilities that are homeless, we have people that are abusing drugs that are homeless, and we have people that are down on their luck and are homeless. I have an idea of creating one building in downtown Seattle that will help everybody, so they don't get bounced around from one service to another. That means they have adequate shelters, there's social workers there to follow people that are abusing drugs, because no one can end the abusing drugs without help from someone else. We also need to ensure that they have basic medical treatment. And how quickly will I do it? I don't think there's any way that you will 100% fix homelessness, but I know that we can make a
And if you are cut off, just go ahead and finish your sentence.
It's
We're not allowing anyone's pet.
Like I said, I've spent my career working on creating housing for low and moderate income families. Many of our homeless population just need a place to live, and that's why I'm going to focus first and foremost. Number one, building enough housing. Number two, making sure people don't fall into homelessness in the first place by supporting rent assistance and other programs that keep people from falling into homelessness. I want to separate that out real quick. Then we have people that are dealing with substance and mental health issues. That's a different population. I see that population every day as I walk around downtown. We need temporary shelters, we need wraparound services to keep these people from disintegrating in front of our eyes on the streets. And I do have a plan in place for that, but I can give it to you in 45 seconds. Thank you.
All right, so the homeless crisis, I know it's on everyone's mind, and it is a very daunting crisis. And there is not, as has been stated, and we will probably all state the same thing, one solution will not fit all. We've got 12,112 people homeless as far as the 2018 homeless one count. 6,300 of them are not sheltered. Out of that, 32% of them are drug addicts. So the first thing I would do is I think we need permanent supportive housing, because the way we're going to help these people is to get them off the street and into housing.
There is absolutely a role to play for more affordable housing. There is also a role to play to ensure that folks don't face economic insecurity in the first place. And that means improving the financial resiliency of at-risk households, as well as providing greater wraparound services for other contributing factors to ensure that any hiccup in a financial emergency or missing a rent payment does not end up someone on the street. What's more is, like some of my colleagues up here, I do believe that this needs to be addressed at a regional level, because Seattle should not be footing all of the bill. Thank you.
I've thought about the fact that instead of being a world-class city, how about if Seattle becomes a city of recovery? I think there's a lot of room for that kind of thing. Hope, a hand up, housing, and accountability. Those are the elements I think that have to be in place. But consistently I see we're giving services, we're giving housing, but what kind of hope, what kind of spiritual renewal are we giving the people that we're serving? I think that's a critical part to add to the mix. We've certainly put a lot of money into it, but what if we gave people hope? And what if we gave you hope to come and help the other people? I think these are critical things to consider instead of just throwing money at everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2 from SOS, and the first person who will answer will be Michael George. The city's public safety survey of thousands of Seattle residents conducted by Seattle University consistently shows lack of police capacity as a top concern. Do you agree that there is a lack of police capacity, and if so, how would you address this issue?
Thank you. Yes, I would. I think anybody that's looked at the data would agree that we do not have enough police officers. We have tried a number of things, including bonuses to police officers. We have tried to increase wages so that they're competitive with other places around this region and around the country, and we are still not attracting the police officers that we need. I think fundamentally the issue that we're running into is police officers come to the city for 3 years and then leave because they don't feel like the city supports them. And until that happens, until we really start appreciating the fact that police risk their lives to protect our city and give them the ability to do their job, we are probably not going to attract police no matter how much we throw at this. Thank you.
Yes, I think it's obvious, they talk about it all the time, we need more law enforcement officers. What we also don't need is more prosecuting attorneys. Without prosecuting attorneys, we have no place to put the people that the police are arresting. Same thing, if we're going to have more prosecuting attorneys, then we need more jail guards. Hopefully you've read that they are all working overtime and are extremely stressed. So we need more jail guards. But what do we really need to do when our law enforcement officers encounter people who are breaking the law, which are the drug addicts? We need a place other than jail to take them. We've got to take them to a facility where they must go through a treatment program. Thank you.
So this is a manpower or recruitment, a retention problem, right? So we have, the SPD has 1,300 police officers. That's shockingly up from 1,100 in 1970. It's mind-boggling. Compare that to Boston, compare that to San Francisco, which has over 2,000 police officers, and 100,000 less people, and a smaller square footage to patrol. We're not adequately at staffing levels. And again, it's not just the police. We have a city attorney's office that has 31 city attorneys. That means that maybe 15 or 20 are actually prosecuting. 14,000 referrals. There's just not enough cycles in the day for prosecuting attorneys to actually prosecute. If we're going to fix this, we have to invest in infrastructure, and that includes police and prosecutors. That's where I want to focus.
All right, now I might disagree on some of this issue. I don't know that we necessarily need a ton more police officers, but I definitely do think that we need good, really good police officers, many of which are leaving because they cannot prosecute the crimes that they have, and there's also a few that really aren't following their own rules. And there's an Office of Professional Accountability, but it doesn't have much oversight because there's a guild member from the police department sitting in making sure they don't say anything wrong. So they don't have much oversight. Second of all, they write the report, it goes to the district attorney's office, they put it in the recycling bin, or they decide to prosecute it, and the judge has to rely exactly on what the city attorney is saying, and that's it.
A really big issue that we face is that we have a very small number of police for the size of a city that we are. We have 19 police officers per 1,000 residents. The average for a city over 500,000 people is 27 per 1,000 residents. Property crimes are crimes of opportunity. The lack of police presence in our neighborhoods to patrol our neighborhoods and to be on the ground and working with residents is because we have a police staffing problem. Public safety is a charter service and needs to be a bigger budget priority of the city council. But our officers and our prosecutors are also only as strong as the tools that we give them. And we can't arrest our way out of these problems only. And I'll just give a really quick example. Law enforcement assisted diversion, that's a tool for our police officers. It makes them stronger. And as a prosecutor, we need more treatment-based diversions as well as more police officers.
Just a quick correction, we have 1.9 police officers per 1,000. Some other cities have anywhere from 2.7 to 4.0 police officers per 1,000. I sat on the neighborhood policing plan committee for 4 years, and we came up with a scientific plan, submitted it to the council, and they did not fund it to get more police officers. We do need better funding. We do need police officers who can stay on the street. What I have found with a brother who's still on the Seattle Police Department, the paperwork has gone from one piece of paper, say, for an incident, to 6 or 7. We have to reduce the paperwork so those police officers can get back on the street and interact with the community that they're serving. And we have to make sure we have the best wages, working hours, and the conditions to work in.
It is true that in our city charter, the first primary responsibility of our city leaders is to ensure and enhance the health and safety of our citizens. And recent public uproar would suggest that we don't have the capacity to fulfill that promise. And one of the main reasons is that I believe we are understaffed with police. Here in Magnolia, for a priority 1 emergency call, the average response time is over 9 minutes. And God forbid there be a violent break-in or a domestic abuse situation, 9 minutes is just too long. I believe that in part the problem is due to the low wages. I think that we could improve our wages to ensure that the people who are caring for us are being cared for by this community.
I don't think necessarily it's going to be the police capacity that's the problem. It's the fact that they're not able to do their jobs. We recently had a lot of information given to us from different sources, and by and large what it's shown is the police are restrained from doing what it is that police do. But that being said, we can't arrest our way or prosecute our way out of the problem. I submit to you that one of our biggest problems in the city is the mayor. The mayor is not doing her job. She's the person that's in charge of the police department. Carmen Best, of course, is the head of the department, but it's our mayor that has failed us. And I think it's her that needs to have some things addressed at her, even recalling her.
We need to support our police officers. The current city council doesn't support the police. We need more power for the police officers, and the only way we're going to get that is to show them that we support them. We need proactive and not reactive police officers. We don't get to pick and choose what laws we enforce, but that's what the city council is telling the police. Don't move this RV, but if you park in a parking spot for more than 2 hours, you're going to get a ticket. We have people that are committing crimes every single day in Magnolia, and in all of District 7. And our police need to be able to respond to it and do something about it. But they're not going to be able to unless they have the support of the Seattle City Council. And they're going to continue to leave if they don't feel like they're being supported.
So I'm going to ask a question from the group. There's no consensus question, so I'm just going to pick and choose, which means some of you will leave quite disappointed that your questions were not asked. But the one question that I wanted to ask before we go on, and that first answer will be Don Harper, is, and not everybody said that you thought we needed more police, but I'm still going to ask you anyway, how would you fund more police officers, or how would you fund whatever your plan is in regard to the question that you were just asked about police? Don Harper.
Well, my understanding of the current city budget is that we have raised the wages and created a bonus for hiring police officers, and we already are budgeted for, I know that Jim will correct me or get me straight on this, but I think we have 300 or 500 police officers that we are trying to hire. So the money is already there. It is actually finding the police officers. That's my understanding.
So I just want to add, it is not just about funding police officers. This has to be a total approach. We also have to grow the city attorney's office. We've heard over and over again, if we don't have prosecutors, what is the point of actually effecting arrests? Police are not the only part of this. So when we talk about funding, I think that we have to decide if this is a priority for Seattle. If it is, which I believe it is, then there's two sources of funding. One, we go to 11, or two, we look at existing line items and decide if we can take existing money and grow the police force. Look, we've got to get to 2,000, at least 2,000 police officers. That is what comparable cities have. That's where we should be. I'd like to look at all sources of funding. I'd like to make sure that we can not only grow it, but grow it over 10 years, especially as the population of Seattle grows. So, look, we have to decide as a city if this is a priority. I believe it is.
Well, we have a $2.9 million budget here in Seattle, and I can think of a million places we could pull the funding from if we really needed to. First being the Fort Lawton redevelopment, which is supposed to allegedly house 600 people 8 years from now. That's not going to make a huge dent. Second of all, this First Avenue streetcar, not a fan. That's what, $400 million or so. And second of all, I think that we could very easily make Seattle more affordable, because I can tell you for certain that most of these officers don't live here, so they cannot afford, or I mean they're not able to vote for the administration that hires them.
So one thing that we really need is more accountability in the oversight of the city budget. The Seattle city budget has gone from $4 to $6 billion over the last 7 years. The oversight is more ad hoc than the county across the street, which has a more sophisticated annual system of performance auditing their budget on a regular basis. Over the last 3 years, King County has saved $127 million through performance auditing. We should be emulating those practices in the city of Seattle. We should be accountable with the money that we have. Now, I don't think that performance auditing alone is going to get us the investment that we're going to need for permanent supportive housing, for expanding our police force, but it's going to show the people of Seattle that we're listening, that we are being efficient with the resources that we do have, and we'll build credibility if we need to ask for more.
My current experience is that there are about 130 vacancies or people on leave right now. Let's fill those through aggressive recruiting, training, and more favorable retention. Let's also scrub the budget and see if we don't have enough, where can we look in the existing budget citywide to get that. At the same time, let's do a study, see what the workload is. Where are the police being deployed? When are they being deployed? And how are they being deployed? And last, my experience shows multi-agency task force. Burglars, car thieves, criminals don't respect boundary lines of a city. Some of our best successes in prosecutions came from multi-agency task forces working with King County, Shoreline Police, Bellevue Police.
It is true that budgets are moral documents and they represent the values of our community. It's also true that anyone who's worked in strategy or in business knows that strategy is as much about what you choose not to do as it is what you choose to do. And to that end, I believe that we do need to take a hard look at the city budget and decide as a community what are those things that we're prioritizing at this time. We know that we're living in an acute crisis related to homelessness. Many of our neighbors are feeling that they're not heard around issues related to health and safety. And so it's clear that this may be a priority of our time. Secondly, if we decide to ask for more revenue, I share the belief that we need to first earn the trust back from the voters. Thank you.
What seems kind of funny or odd to me is why do we talk about getting more prosecutors? Because we just heard, like, within the last 2 to 4 weeks, that even if you send all the prosecutions to the city's attorney, they don't even prosecute them. I talked to the manager of several of our major stores out in Broward, and they told me how many times they've referred people for shoplifting to the prosecutor's office, and they haven't done anything with it. But anyway, about that funding, I supported the head tax, but with the distinction that it should not have been targeted on the top tier of businesses, that the taxing rate should have been lowered, and it should have applied to all businesses. I'm a former business owner and I don't want more taxes, but we need to add something to the kitty, and that was one of the methods that we could use. Thank you.
We need more accountability and transparency within our city government, and we cannot continue to raise property taxes. We have the money, but we aren't spending it wisely. We spent $230 million on a streetcar that doesn't fit. Where's the accountability? I want independent audits of all city contracts, and I want those to be 100% transparent and public to you. I want them to be on the internet so you can see where is the money going, who is our contractors, and what are we spending.
All right, stick with me here. This is going to be a little complex. We're nibbling around the edges here. We can audit, we can do all kinds of things, but the fact is we have less than 1/3 of King County's population, and we have over 75% of the homeless population in this city. We talk about regional solutions. That just means Bellevue and King County, basically, trying to shoulder this entire burden. We're never going to have enough resources for any of the things we need until we figure this out. I am proposing that we go to the state and we say, Cities like Bellevue, wealthy cities, you need to step up. We're not asking you anymore, and we should do it with mechanisms like we did with the Growth Management Act, where we went out to these cities and said, you're not doing your fair share, we're going to sanction your taxes, we're going to sanction gas taxes, we're going to sanction other things. We need real solutions because everything else is just nibbling. Thank you.
Question from the audience. How do you plan to get the drug-using free campers off the streets? Will you enforce current ordinances about vagrancy, littering, public urination, public drug use, etc.? Naveed.
So, Andrew, 3 times I've gotten questions and I said I wanted to increase the size of the city attorney. My man, I'm trying to get you a raise. You should probably vote for me. Look, this comes down to the same thing. We can have police officers, we can have enforcement, but if we don't have the will and frankly the cycles to prosecute, we talk about police officers, but we forget the fact that prosecutors play into this. Look, if we were to start charging everyone today for drug paraphernalia charges or trespassing, our courts would get jammed up. We would never get anything through. Remember, today we're getting 14,000 referrals sent to the city attorney's office. There's simply not the bandwidth. So to answer that question, if we're going to be serious about prosecuting things, we have to increase the city attorney. And yes, size of the city attorney, yes, we should probably give Andrew a raise. Thank you.
All right, I'll stand now because I'm a bit tired of sitting, but I think the best way to address the urban camping crisis and everything that it includes is a simple fundamental law of economics, which is supply and demand. If we start targeting the demand, meaning the people using the drugs, then we put the suppliers out of business very quickly. If we just keep focusing on the suppliers, they're just going to pop right back up. If we move them or sweep them out of their current campsite, they're just going to move a few blocks down to a new one. And these people are not all the same. There are a lot of them who want out of this lifestyle. They're factioning amongst themselves, and while most of my comrades here have spent a great deal of time fundraising and gathering money, I've been visiting the urban campsites and talking to all the urban campers because they need to be on board for this to work.
Naveed, I'm sorry, I already have a campaign manager. Let's see how the rest of the campaign goes. As a prosecutor, I'm just going to say that one of the most crippling things in my position is that a lot of the people that come into our court that are incompetent to stand trial, that the King County doesn't have the resources to engage the Involuntary Treatment Act, just get released right back onto our streets. The state of Washington has decided the streets of Seattle are going to be the mental hospital for the state, and that's extremely unfair to all of us and to the folks that are living on our streets. One of the biggest things that would help as a prosecutor, and all of us can still do this because the legislature is still in session, remember this, House Bill 1593, House Bill 1593, to create a teaching hospital at the University of Washington for behavioral mental health. That, more than anything, would provide 150 inpatient beds that I could send people to as a prosecutor. It would get people off the street. It would get people the treatment they need. Thank you.
I'm a strong supporter after my experience of the 4 pillars of drug enforcement. The first one is prevention. The second one is harm reduction for those who are using. The third is treatment, whether it's Suboxone, whether it's buprenorphine, whether it's methadone. The last one is enforcement. We do have to enforce illegal sales of drugs. There are options within that ban that, as Andrew mentioned, I was on the founding group of law enforcement assisted diversion, taking low-level, nonviolent, sometimes mentally ill or emotionally disturbed drug users, drug sellers, and getting them immediately into intensive case management. It works and reduced crime by 66%.
Thank you. We have to remember that homelessness is first and foremost a problem related to economic insecurity. And as we discussed earlier, that means that we need to provide more housing for folks to get into supportive housing and into places where they can be provided services. In the meantime, we should provide access to restrooms and other areas where folks who are living on the street can access services, and that also means access to health care and meeting people where they're at, providing such drugs like Suboxone, which Mr. Pugel mentioned, and then ensuring that we're providing the wraparound services to make sure that people are helping themselves to get on a path of self-sufficiency.
I believe it was 2017 when San Diego put in its big plan. And if you think about it, who is it that responds and how do they respond to emergencies? We're supposedly had a declaration of emergency here, and yet where are our large lots of housing on city property that the city already owns? But it's a three-part proposition. They have to have a place to go. We've heard about the recent legal decisions in the court. So therefore, if there's no place to go, they can stay where they are. So it kind of begs the question, we need to do that. Then, if we have a place to go, then we can do enforcement. But the final part is if we're going to have these encampments, it's incumbent upon the city to start cleaning them up from the beginning before they get out of control. Garbage, sewer, and water services.
Marysville and Arlington have a great program. They have a social worker that goes with the police officer. They find someone who's using drugs. They give them two options. You go to jail or you go into treatment. I think Seattle needs to start that. We can't allow people to have less than 3 grams of heroin on them and say, we're not going to prosecute you. If you have illegal drugs on you, we need to find them an alternative solution. I talked to a store director of a very large business in downtown Seattle. He said that he spends more money some weeks on loss prevention than he does on sales, than he makes on sales. He had the same person OD in his bathroom twice in the past month. The EMR response time was 4 minutes. He had a woman sexually assaulted. The response time was 1 hour, and the known vagrant got away.
Thank you. I think fundamentally we need to make more space for treatment services. We need to have more shelters for people. We need to do whatever we can to have a place for people to go, because it doesn't really matter what approach we choose to take if we don't have a place to put people. And that is a fundamental issue that we are facing. I have spent my career trying to make space for the things that we need in this city. I think we are not doing a very good job at that, and I think there are a number of things we could do that could create a lot more space. And it's not just Seattle. Again, the Furcrest facility up in Shoreline, they're getting rid of land. We need that space to put mental health facilities and drug rehabilitation facilities. Thank you.
People are correct. It's going to take a regional approach. I'll be honest, unless we want to start cutting back on so many of our programs, parks, transportation, the bike lanes, on, we're not going to be able to afford it. Looking at the Tacoma project that they're doing, where they have a large FEMA-like tent down there, and they're housing 90 people in it, at $2.1 million a year. I estimate in order to house the unsheltered, $6,500, it's going to cost $365 million per year. So we've got to look at this in a much bigger sense. We cannot arrest our way out of this problem. We have got to take the people that are mentally ill and drug addicted and a combination of both, and we've got to find a place for them to stay in permanent supportive housing.
We want to change the
County. I really believe in it, but I can tell you as somebody that has worked on all those projects, there is not enough capacity there. The city is growing. We need housing. It's going to have to be accommodated in neighborhoods. The problem that I have is that as we do that, I like the term one size fits all. We cannot take a one size fits all approach. People know their neighborhoods. We need to work with people in their neighborhoods to understand what they need. We need to bring the infrastructure in along with development to support that new housing and the people that are going to live there. Thank you.
All right, I want to build affordable housing while retaining trees, providing open space, and preserving neighborhoods. The City Council has done one of the worst jobs I've ever seen as they go to alter our current zoning. MHA and then the current, as you know, Queen Anne Community Council is suing DIS on Howell, on the detached units. What we need is to go back what we did 15, 20 years ago when we set up urban villages. We went to every neighborhood and we talked about what we could allow, what we could work with in those neighborhoods. We had buy-in. What did that bring us? Success. We have urban villages. Not everyone needs to live in Seattle. I think that's something we just got to grow up and start to pay attention to.
So I guess I'm the outlier. I came here, I'm not a second or third or fourth generation Seattleite. I came here because of opportunity. So I guess you could say that I'm contributing to that density. While I'm contributing to that density, I don't consider myself dense, and I certainly don't consider my wife, who came here to work with Fred Hutch, who's a cancer researcher, dense. So I reject this idea that density is a negative thing. Look, I have two wonderful boys. We came here for Seattle for that opportunity, and part of that opportunity included schools. We're proud to be using public schools here. Density is the way forward. If we're going to, we have to decide, is this a small town or is it a big city? If it's going to be a big city, which is why I moved here, then this is about density. Density has to be built along infrastructure that exists. That means Belltown, South Lake Union, places that we can build up. Density is something we should all be aspiring to. Thank you.
Here is a Magnolia-centric question. Do you think that the Magnolia Bridge, which we have been told is crumbling, should be rebuilt in its current location? If so, how will you pay for it? If not, why not? That question goes first to Andrew Lewis.
Yes, I support a one-for-one replacement of Magnolia Bridge. It's an absolutely essential project. I'm going to say this, 265 Metro buses use that bridge every day. It's an essential transportation hub. It's also an essential artery for this neighborhood to get to the rest of the city. The way we're going to pay for it is whoever gets elected to this position needs to be the hub around which the coalition is built. The Port of Seattle needs that bridge to get to the Smith Cove Uplands. 15th Avenue that bridge is adjacent to is a critical freight corridor. Millions of people that come to the city of Seattle on cruise ships every year, the first thing they see is the Magnolia Bridge. We should be elevating this to building an icon, to building the first thing that our city makes an impression on to foreign visitors. And it should be something that we elevate to being a regional issue, because it is a regional issue. Thank you.
I support a one-for-one replacement. I do not plan or pretend to be a soil or civil engineer. I'll leave where and how up to those folks. I've done the research on it. The original bridge was built with about one quarter money. The residents of Magnolia paid for some of it. Port of Seattle paid for some of it. King County paid for some of it. And Burlington Northern, Santa Fe also paid for some of it to get people to and from. It's going to be between 390 to 420 million, which is a Safeco or a T-Mobile field. It's not cheap, but some people that I've doorbelled with in Magnolia have even suggested their portion will be a local improvement district. The thing is, we have to find money and find a coalition to come together, because a lot of different corporations and groups depend on it.
I'm a Magnolia resident. I live on 29th and Lynn, and I am absolutely in favor of Magnolia Bridge, one-for-one replacement. Magnolia is essentially an island that's only served by 3 points of access, and if we lose Magnolia Bridge, then we'll be forced to use Dravis, which many of our neighbors are already concerned is already too congested. I do believe that the Magnolia Bridge is important for access to emergency services, for viability of businesses in the village, as well as for timely alternatives for public transportation. We should get it done. I believe that funding, when I talk to neighbors at their doors, I would say over 80% are open to paying for part of the bridge. They just need someone to take lead on prioritizing it, and I'll be that person to prioritize it. Thank you.
If I have one thing to tell you about the Magnolia Bridge, win, lose, or draw, hold the city's feet to the fire about this. They've jerked us around for over 10 years, taken millions of dollars and done nothing about the funding. They They can find plenty of money when they want to do something. But there's 4 critical players: the Port of Seattle, the railroads, and Sound Transit, and our federal partners. Each of those entities has the money and the funds, and particularly the port, the railroads, and Sound Transit. This should be bundled in. I noticed that Gail Tarleton is talking about, replacing the Ballard Bridge. Stay vigilant if you do nothing else. Thank you.
I support a one-to-one replacement of the Magnolia Bridge. And how we're going to pay for it goes back to the accountability and transparency of this investment. Again, we spent $230 million on streetcars that don't fit. That's more than half of what the Magnolia Bridge would have cost. So independent audits to find out where all the money is going. I also would like to add an entrance and exit directly from Magnolia to Smith Cove. I don't know how many of you remember seeing Steve Smalley live stream the large accident that happened in the middle of the bridge because people continuously take U-turns to go to and from Smith Cove or Palisades. So we need to also address that, and if we're going to replace the Magnolia Bridge, we add that entrance and exit.
I am also for a one-for-one replacement of the Magnolia Bridge. It's my kind of project. I love complex, big infrastructure projects. Again, I spent my career working on these things. In fact, I've worked on the Terminal 91 property that it crosses, as well as the Valley of West Seattle Light Rail project that's an example. We need to make a case. We need to show that there is a priority to funding this bridge. It's going to have regional implications if we do not get this bridge funded. This is not just about Magnolia. We need to make that case. We also need to show that there is going to be more than 17,000 people driving across that bridge every day. We need to show that that is the traffic today, that will increase over time, and I'm going to help make that case because that's how we're going to get this done. Thank you.
One, in order to get out of here alive, and I want you to know that I've been supporting the one-to-one replacement for over 10 years. We've been talking about it for at least that long. I think we can afford this bridge. I think we need to use work with King County and the state money. And I think SDOT on the city council, what we need to start doing is on a yearly basis, we need to start collecting capital money so that we're not coming up with it all at once. We're coming up with it year by year. Maybe in 3 years, 4 years, we'll have the capital money combined with state, possibly federal, and King County money to replace the bridge before it falls down.
I know it's shocking. I also support replacing the Magnolia Bridge. Look, the facts are not in doubt. This is a $400 million project. It needs to be done. Here's where the problem lies. Who's going to pay for it? And I'll tell you where we have to focus. This is a no-joke negotiation. Look, we had an opportunity with Expedia. That is an opportunity that unfortunately is in the rearview mirror. When we have a good city council, we have council members that will go out there and negotiate on your behalf. The reality is we're not going to necessarily pay for this out of pocket, $400 million. We need someone else to chip in. As Michael said, this is going to be something where we have to find a partnership. That partnership comes to negotiation. What I can offer, specifically in this, is an experience, a lifetime of negotiating. Whether it was negotiating with the Russians or the Department of Defense, this is something I know. Thank you.
Okay, so I would not say that the entire bridge in itself needs to be replaced. I argue that the front part, the deck of the bridge, could very easily be recycled. And I'm going to call it the Invisilift Bridge, because you can very easily take those pillars, put them on a cable, and create basically a miniature cable suspension bridge combined with multiple aspects of the bridge, and it would be far less costly than this $400 million estimate, which I'm not sure who came up with, but it was probably a very long time ago. And I think sometimes when you find yourself in a box, the only way you can really get out of it is to think of a better idea that's more creative, less expensive, and new. And then use it for the other bridges too. Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of tax questions, so I'm going to ask them together. So, and the first person to answer this will be Jim Pugel. Would you support the head tax? Would you support a city income tax? If so, why? If not, why not? Head tax or city income?
The head tax or the employment per person tax all has to be looked at. What are we going to use it for? Let's determine, we've talked about it here with other budgetary issues. Let's look at what our current budget is. Let's scrub it. Let's have performance audits. What are we spending the money on currently? And be very clear. Let's involve our private industry people, the nonprofits, everyone. The reason why the head tax, employment tax didn't work is because it was put out there. They basically said, I'd gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. There was no plan. As far as a city or a city tax, that's up to the state. The state Supreme Court's been crystal clear that that's clearly up to the state on whether we have a state income tax. I do support a statewide capital gains tax.
When I go around and talk to neighbors, among our most conservative, fiscally conservative neighbors, they will concede that even they would have been okay with something with a head tax if a few things were in place. One, if citizens and businesses were consulted first, if it wasn't such a rash decision that came from the council in a top-down sort of fashion, if there was some track record of success to point to, and right now the voters feel like there isn't accountability and isn't that track record, and if there is a plan in place. It is true that if I go to a venture capitalist and I've got no track record and I've got no plan, but I ask for $2 million, just
Shoreline and charge less and make more money.
So if all politics are local, I would also say all politics are negotiation. This isn't about punishing Amazon. This isn't about going after a tax base. This is about a negotiation. Look, the head tax was an ill-founded idea simply because what it failed to do was open up lines of negotiations with Amazon and other big companies. The reality is the reason Amazon, Expedia, Google, Facebook, all these big companies here is what? It's people. It's not that there's gold or oil in the hills. If their people can't afford to live here, they will move. That is something that I and them are aligned with. It is about retention for Amazon, and if we can propose solutions where they can contribute, where there's a vested interest in retaining their employees, making the city livable so their people can stay here, they will get on board. Of that I am sure. That is the focus that we should move forward with.
So I don't think anybody really jumps with excitement when they hear the word tax, but I could be wrong, so no, I do not support an increase in any taxes. In fact, I think the city could operate pretty well with less money if they could just find a better way to do it. So what I would propose is a very strange concept called trading. We used to do it back when we were cavemen and whatnot. We could very easily work with these businesses and trade them for the technology and the infrastructure that they have to help us solve the urban camping crisis. And I think that's all I need to say. I'm not even at the limit. Thank you.
As I go door to door in every part of District 7, the thing I hear constantly in every neighborhood is that property taxes and sales taxes have gotten so high that people that are on fixed incomes and people that are retiring in place it's getting increasingly difficult to live in this city. I think everything needs to be on the table if we're talking about paying down regressive taxes. We are the most regressive tax jurisdiction and the most regressive tax state in the country. And I do support the idea of talking about an income tax if we used it to reduce and pay down property taxes, if we used it to reduce and pay down sales taxes. That needs to be on the table. It needs to be something we're talking about, because going at the rate we're going with property taxes is not going to be sustainable for the long term. And so yes, I would look at those taxes for those purposes.
I think we have time for just one more question before we get to wrap up. And so this one is sort of what Andrew was just talking about. And the first, I think we have time, yes, for just one more question before we get to the final ones for them. And Andrew mentioned it a bit in his talk, but this is from the audience. I am retired and on a fixed income. What do you have to say to those of us being forced out by rising taxes and levies? Jason Williams.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think this is such an important question because when we talk about the ability for everyone to live, work, and play in the same community, there's a milieu of different faces of economic insecurity in our town. Yes, there are the Uber drivers. Yes, there's the working poor. And yes, though there is the elderly on fixed income who see rising property taxes and no longer able to live in their homes. I was meeting with one of our neighbors on 42nd Avenue West. Virginia is 88, and her property taxes in the last 2 years have gone up 25%. She had a new home that was built right and blocked her view, and her property taxes did not go down as a result. And so I think we do need to provide relief for our seniors who are living in financial stress.
The only relief that I can think of for what's happening is to change the city council over. And you've got almost half of the city council up for vote this year. And continue that work, because a lot of this is set in place. The levies are already set in place. The plans that the city has for growth, for the land use and everything, all of that is in place. So you need to get these city council people out, send a message to them, and you've got a good crop of people in District 7 here and all across the city. Take the city council back, and that's how you can start solving some of these problems.
Well, I'm obviously against raising property taxes, and I'm obviously against raising taxes in general. We continue to raise property taxes every single year, and I'm not sure we're seeing a difference. Are we seeing our substance abuse issues go down? No, they're going up. I have been on the news for the past 6 years arguing about this. It is not getting any better, which goes back to accountability and transparency. We raise property taxes every single year. Where is that money going? So we need the independent audits, and we need to find out where it is going.
So I've knocked on over 1,000 doors in Magnolia and Queen Anne, and this issue comes up time and time again. There are so many people that have been in these neighborhoods for generations, and they're dealing with being displaced. When we think about displacement, I think people forget that displacement happens in every neighborhood in Seattle, especially to seniors on fixed incomes. I do think there are additional exemptions we can offer beyond what we already do to people on fixed incomes. However, again, I think if we continue to try to solve all of the regional issues in Seattle, we're going to continue spending money, and there are consequences to that. And I think as a city council member, if I am proposing any new tax, I will understand the weight of those decisions. Thank you.
I spent 7 years on 2 parks levy oversight committees where our job was to make sure that what you were promised in the levy actually happened. What we saw with those levies is that the estimates were done right. We did not spend more than what was allocated for each program. Unlike the Move Seattle levy, $930 million of complete underestimate and failure. What I've seen with the City Council is that they are drunk with levies. Their levies are very poorly written. You want to vote on a levy, you should know exactly what you're getting. It's not that levies are bad, but you should know exactly what you're buying. Are you getting a sidewalk? Yes. Are you getting a curb cut? Yes. You should know exactly what you're getting, and then you can make a decision whether to vote for it or not.
At its fundamental core, what Seattle cannot become is a city of bookends. We can't take away and continue the vanishing of the middle. It's not just about elderly folks on fixed incomes. It's about middle-class people like, look, I had to quit my job to run for city council. We're working on a one-income family raising 2 boys. This is a challenge for a lot of us. The idea that Seattle is going to appeal to just the poles of the economy is the wrong way to do this. We have to focus on the middle class. Look, the idea of retirees who are house poor, it's something my parents back in New York deal with. This is not a problem specific just to Seattle. But you're right. Look, we also have an issue with the fact that we don't have income tax. That means we have to rely on levies. I absolutely feel that pain, and as a city council, I can offer transparency and to be absolutely resolute when it comes to making sure that we don't raise tax unless we have to.
All right, so for this question, I'm going to just do a little bit of a visual, and I'm going to need to use this name tag. If there is a new development, a new high-rise building, you might see them around. They look like cubicles or filing cabinets. Now, if I built one of these developments right here, where this pen is, and I drew a circle around it, every single building every single building would raise in land value, and because property taxes are a percentage of the appraised value of your land, your property taxes are going to continue to go up, even though these developers have been basically given a green light to not pay property taxes for 12 years, and that gets passed down to the renters too.
As a city council, we need to be more deliberate and more careful when we put new levies to the people of Seattle. Now, I intend to vote for the library levy, personally, but I think the Seattle City Council, and if I were on the council, I would take out the provision about the overdue late fees being put into the levy. Now, I think that there are ways as a city council that we can build in policies to have equity to our return policies, to waive late fees for people who are facing hardship. But if Howard Schultz has a late fee, I want him to pay it. And we need to be careful as a city that when we're putting these levies to the people, that we're making sure we're prioritizing the essential charter services, that we're making sure that it's more targeted, and we're making sure that it's not overbroad. And that's going to be the way that we try to keep the levies under control and keep property taxes lower. Thank you.
We're getting taxed at a state, at a county, at a regional, the Regional Transit Authority, Sound Transit, the library, the Move Seattle Forward levy, the school levies, the library levy, the parks levies, the King County Park levy, and Seattle Park levy. We have to find a way to regionalize some of these things. Again, complete performance audits, see where the money is going. And we also have to re-examine the breaks. That there's currently a program where seniors and others who are financially strapped can approach the King County tax assessor and have some forgiveness or reduction of those taxes. But we have to, if we really want the rich, diverse city of all income levels and all ages, we have to really examine these non-stop levies.
And that wraps up the questions from the audience. And so now, so that we can get out somewhat on time, we are going to have the candidate closing statements. And the good news is we're going to end where we started, and each candidate has 30 seconds, which you're very accustomed to by now, to close out and tell us why you should be elected to the Seattle City Council. Elizabeth Campbell.
Thank you. You should elect me because I'll be there fighting for you. I've spent almost 25 years up here fighting for one thing or another, but you have my promise. I'll go to bat for you, and I won't go behind the curtain and change my ways. I'm always 100% for the public. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. I promise to listen to you. I will be your voice at City Council and at City Hall. I want to do this to make this city the city that I remember growing up. I have been here for 30 years, and I promise to listen to you. I will be here afterwards at the end. Come talk to me. There's so many more issues I would love to speak with all of you about. So please, I welcome all of your questions, all of your concerns. And I ask for your vote.
I am the only candidate that has been working on housing and transportation projects for my entire career. We cannot keep doing more of the same. We need a council member with the vision and experience to actually solve the issues, and that's why I'm running. As your council member, I will listen, and together we will get this done. My name is Michael George. I encourage you to reach out to me after this, and I really want to hear your concerns. You'll see me soon on your doorstep. Thank you.